Rick Morris from the FDH Lounge has a national radio show. He's based out of Cleveland. How are you, Rick? Appreciate you coming on tonight, my friend.
I'm doing great, buddy. Thanks for having me on this historic day. UMBC has just become the first ever number 16 seed to lose in the second round of the NCAA tournament.
Is that right? That's correct. You're right, because it's the only 16 seed to get to the second round of the tournament. That's great stuff, man. I love it. Your thoughts on the tournament so far? I mean, we've seen so many ridiculous upsets like you just mentioned. Michigan over Houston wasn't a great upset, but a great finish. Loyola over Tennessee, another great ending. Buffalo smoking Arizona by 20. Carolina losing to A&M by 23. Your thoughts so far on what the hell's going on?
Well, I want to know, does CBS have a 12-inch extended dance version of One Shining Moment? Because you're not going to cram it in the usual 3-minute reel, okay?
You're right.
Too many things already. It's just the first weekend. I mean, what lies ahead from here? And you look at all the Goliaths that have toppled so far, you're going to have some of these Cinderellas at this point, maybe having even a relatively clear shot to the Final Four, believe it or not. So we could be seeing the most wide-open tournament probably of the modern era, fittingly coinciding in the year of the first 1/16 upset.
What do you think about Villanova and their chances to not only make some noise, but go the whole way?
Joe, I tell you what, as I said when you were on the FDH Lounge tournament preview show, much to your delight, they were my pick then, and oh boy, are they my pick now, because you have done nothing but seen your path get cleared out here. I mean, it is a beautiful thing right now if you're a Villanova fan.
Who can stand in their way? They have West Virginia or Marshall up next. Marshall down by a point right now with about 10 minutes to go in the first half. And they also have a team that I've been keeping my eye on, that team that I like if Villanova wasn't in that same bracket, Purdue. 4 starting seniors and a sophomore, and they've been, I know their big man is out with that broken elbow, but they seem to be rocking and rolling. They're in the Sweet 16.
True, but that bracket has got some teams in there, and going into the tournament, I looked at Texas Tech as a team that could very well have a pretty good shot at playing Villanova. So you look at it, and Villanova, they haven't had as many upsets in their way in the bracket. That's one of those things where, relative to some of the other top seeds in the tournament, they've still got a little bit of a tougher road to hoe to get to the Final Four, but this is one of these reverse funnel kind of situations.
Yep.
It may get a little bit easier once they get to the Final Four.
Obviously, Virginia's out. Kentucky's still in the mix. They start 5 freshmen and have 1 coming off the bench. Kansas onto the Sweet 16. You know how I feel about Kansas. They'd never met a bad out that they didn't like. Cincinnati done. Nevada beats them. I mean, who do you like emerging, from these 4 brackets? Because you mentioned it yourself. You're going to see some lower seeds possibly in the Final Four. Any, I don't want to call them dark horses because they're in the Sweet 16, but any, big-time lower seeds making it to the Final Four?
Well, I've got to kind of rejigger things at this point here. Not that they were necessarily a lower seed, but on the left side of the bracket here, one of the stronger teams I think that is still remaining is certainly Gonzaga. They played a real donut hole of a game yesterday against Ohio State, starting and finishing strong and not very much in the middle. If I was you guys, that's the one thing that might have me a little bit kind of nervous is the whole thing of last year, the team that lost in the national championship game returned to get it done the next year. So you're going to have a Gonzaga team that they won't have North Carolina on their path to directly try to get revenge, but for Gonzaga, it's out to finish a job that was undone last year. But I said Villanova coming into this thing, and I feel all that much more strongly today.
Yeah, you mentioned Gonzaga. I talked about big upsets versus choke jobs yesterday. Gonzaga, to me, had every chance to win that North Carolina game. They were very strong, but missed shots like that Butler team did a few years ago against UConn. It's been fun. It's been interesting. We'll see how it goes the rest of the way. I love the fact you like Villanova. I like them, too, to get to at least the title game. I have them winning. As long as they keep knocking down their three-pointers, we shall see. Speaking of hoops, speaking of three-pointers, speaking of, the round ball game, LeBron James, there's so much talk around here about where he's going to end up next year. He named his Final Four, reportedly, staying with Cleveland, going to the Lakers, going to Houston, or going to Philadelphia. I think it's either Philadelphia or Houston. What are you hearing out there?
Well, again, there's never anything that materializes from his camp. So I would kind of put a clamp on believing any of that kind of stuff.
I love it.
Or if it is the case, it's because he is looking to have an agenda. I think his camp might have put the Golden State stuff out there at the very height of when he was trying to get changes made here in Cleveland. Look, Eastern Conference is more likely, unless, of course, if the NBA does decide to go 1 through 16 in the playoffs, that takes away a little bit of the Cavs' edge of incumbency, because really, coming out of the East is the best way to do it. It's your clearest shot to the finals. I think it's the Cavs' game to lose, as it has been all along here. If they can convince him that they're going to have stuff set up for him to be able to stay here, I think he's not necessarily looking to leave. His son is about to start playing basketball at his alma mater. He has spoken fondly of wanting to see him be able to play there. And as much as he's talked up Trae Young overtly, that's something that's a very good sign to Cavs fans, because, again, Cavs are sitting there with the Nets pick. Very good chance that the Cavs could see their way clear to getting Trae Young, who, from the way that LeBron is talking, he sees as a guy that he's able to make the handoff to later in his career to be the dominant player on the team. I think there's a chance that it happens with Philadelphia. I'm not ruling it out altogether. And obviously, again, you've got the players there that would make it attractive to him. But Ben Simmons, fairly ball-dominant player. Markelle Fultz, if he ever gets it going, fairly ball-dominant player. Is there room for LeBron in that mix?
I think there's room for LeBron in any mix. Hey, listen, sorry, Markelle Fultz. If there's not any room right now, you just have to take a back seat. I don't think it would be Markelle Fultz. But, yeah, I think in any system, LeBron becomes the system once he gets there. Now, let me ask you this, because the Sixers are auditioning, whether you believe it or not, and whether LeBron has an interest. Do you think it's more important, or is it important at all? Because LeBron has kept his eye on the Sixers, even if it wasn't, a matchup that I'm talking about. But is it important, or how important is it for the Sixers to play the Cavs in the postseason to really give LeBron a taste of how good this team could be going forward?
Look, if I was a Sixer fan, I'd be rooting for that. But you look at the mix the way that it's set up there, and again, I don't particularly buy into these four teams being the ones, but Houston, L.A., he went to Miami previously. So that's basically warm weather / lifestyle plus potentially having things set up there. I don't buy what everybody else does about L.A. They have a ways to go to configure that roster.
Agreed, yep.
It's not at all clear they can get Paul George. We always talk about this on the show, the parallels between Cleveland and Philadelphia. In this case, it's not good for you, my friend, and here's why. Because neither one of these things in a vacuum would be very high on anybody's list of places. For if you're a fancy NBA player, your list of places to live, Cleveland or Philadelphia, well, he grew up in Akron. So that's why Cleveland's attractive to him. You guys are basically Cleveland without the hometown ties.
Sure.
You've got some nice young talent, and he could be looking at that. But he's going to move to Philadelphia? That's not really been his pattern previously on the place that he wants to live in.
Interesting. You just, killed the buzz in this city, 3 million strong, but that's all right. We appreciate the honesty. Now, we have a couple more minutes to go here, my friend. I want to talk football a little bit, from afar, and I know there's the Super Bowl chance, so this isn't like brain surgery, but, Howie Roseman did a great job last year. He did some things in the offseason to tweak. They have a lot of guys coming back. How do the Eagles, or do they, avoid a Super Bowl hangover, and how are they viewed, out your way? The lament for Carson Wentz, and nationally, how are the Birds viewed?
Well, look, there's so many things that have gone wrong for the Browns franchise in the nearly 20 years that they've been back that there's not even really room to resent the Eagles because of the Carson Wentz deal. So nobody even really thinks that much about it. It's one thing on a long, long list of objectionables. And again, I will tell you what I've said to you off air and what I said to you on the FDH Lounge show, which is, again, I listened to your post game the night of the Super Bowl, and I was really happy. It took me back to 2016 with the Cavs, that entire feeling, which is ironic because for you guys, it really was more like 2008 when just a team broke through. That's what it was like for us in 2016.
Yep.
But the Browns are our core team. I think the Eagles, from what you've indicated previously, if there's going to be one team winning a title in that town, gun to your head, you want it to be the Eagles. So you've now had that moment as well of seeing the team of teams in a city do it. And I think nationally, again, everybody is just, really giving Howie Roseman the benefit of the doubt, because why wouldn't you? I mean, everything has really turned around well. The last time I was on your show, we were talking about the quickness of the turnaround. You've had 2 times in the last, 6 years that the roster went in the crapper based on decisions made by other people where he's had to kind of step in and clean it up.
Yep.
So he's done a tremendous, tremendous job with it. And, again, going into the draft, I got to figure that the Eagles are in about as good of a spot as they can possibly be. You're going to want to beef up in a few areas, as you had indicated with the previous caller. Running back possibly, wide receiver. You're going to want to make up for some of the guys that walked out the door. But as far as LeGarrette Blount goes, all I can tell you is after that Super Bowl, if I was Matt Patricia, I'd be thinking LeGarrette Blount was Superman too.
I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. And Matt Patricia, the new head coach of the Detroit Lions, again dished out $4.5 million for LeGarrette Blount. So obviously high on Detroit's list in the offseason. And before I let you go, man, I got to talk about the Browns a little bit. I think they're a fascinating franchise right now because of, listen, they're coming off an 0-16 year, but not that high on the Tyrod Taylor trade, but Jarvis Landry they brought in, and Demarius Randall from the pack, Carlos Hyde, and they have the 1 and the 4 pick. Now you have Saquon Barkley sitting there at 1. I don't know if he'll be around at 4 unless everyone makes the jump to pick up a quarterback. When are you guys going to make your play for a quarterback, and what do you do at number 1? I mean, you got Sam Darnold out there, Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen. Do you know that the Hugh Jackson and the Browns like one of those guys, or do you take Saquon Barkley, the surer thing with number 1?
Well, here's the funny thing is that I'm on a radio show here, obviously in the state of Pennsylvania. The winning candidate in the 2008 presidential election was caught on tape talking about the voters of Pennsylvania, calling them bitter clingers with their guns and religion. I since then have started calling myself a bitter clinger. When I have an opinion, I stick to it. A year ago, I was all about Sam Darnold. I'm all about Sam Darnold today. I think he's the hands-down pick at number 1. I think he has the highest upside. I am the bitter clinger on my Sam Darnold opinion, and I think that's where the Browns are going to go because that Jets trade, I think, makes it likely it's QB. Maybe Barkley's there at 4. But I tell you what, again, after what I said about the chances of LeBron staying with the Cavs, here's my chance to prove that I am not just a blind homer. I disagree with the consensus about this offseason. And I am underwhelmed by the players that the Browns have brought in. I wanted Allen Robinson. I wanted Tremaine Johnson. There were a limited number of impact players. There was $108 freaking million under the cap. You could blow anybody out of the water. They say when you're making trades, Joe, 4 quarters don't equal $1. John Dorsey looks like he's trying to find out how many rolls of quarters he can get for $100 million.
Really? So you're not, because I thought it was interesting, especially you have a 1 and a 4. So you're not that thrilled. Would that change with the 1 and the 4? Listen, you have your wide receiver, I think, in Jarvis Landry. If you get a running back in Saquon Barkley, or maybe a quarterback, and maybe a Minkah Fitzpatrick with a number 4, you're not that excited. It sounds like.
No, well, listen. If it's Barkley and Darnold, I'll be over the moon. But basically, Fitzpatrick at 4, I have to say, my FDH draft analyst, Jason Jones, sold me on this. I'd rather have Derwin James, in which case you trade back a little bit because you know what he is. You don't exactly know what Fitzpatrick is. Maybe he's a cornerback. Maybe he's a safety. Give me the guy who's dominated at one position. But I'd rather have Barkley and Darnold. But that's just a down payment on recovering, I think, where you could have been had you spent the money in more impactful ways. These draft analysts are out there saying, the Browns have filled this position, this position. Really? I mean, Joe, I'll even tell you this. They signed a guy from Ohio University, my alma mater, to play cornerback. And I'm sitting here feeling underwhelmed because, again, he didn't do a whole heck of a lot with the Raiders. So they're theoretically filling needs on paper, but I'm underwhelmed. I'm left a little bit cold. And Jarvis Landry, he of the, 8.8 yards per catch career average difference maker? He's a nice piece, but people are just throwing around impact player really kind of loosely these days. I feel like we're devaluing that currency by applying it to half the guys we do, and he's one of them.
Wow, you're just killing buzzes left and right, my friend. Just killing buzzes left and right. But I love what you got. I love your honesty. I love the information you bring. I really appreciate it, pal, for coming on tonight. We'll catch up with you again soon. I thank you very much, Rick.
Thank you, Joe. I love your show. It's always a great honor.
Thanks, pal. Rick Morris from the FDH Lounge. And a national show based out of Cleveland. Interesting. Underwhelmed. I thought they were doing some good things myself, but that's why I'm not a GM or a tournament bracket picker.